Today's show is brought to you by Kegconnection.com. Purchase all of your homebrewing supplies and draft beer equipment with everyday low pricing and everyday flat rate shipping at Kegconnection.com. Go to Kegconnection.com right now, use the promo code HHH, and you'll get 5% off your order. That's Kegconnection.com, promo code HHH.
Content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Hey, welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, visit homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing, and joining me today, first is the Director of Operations at CMBecker.com, Mr. James Carlson. And then
Eddie. That's why I was saying yay, because I knew it was James.
Oh, I thought you were saying yay. It's the return of the dancing bear. I say the return. You've been on. It's just you're now dancing again. The president and chief keg washer at Kegconnection.com, Mr. Todd Burns. Gentlemen, how are y'all doing today?
Good. Who could not dance to this music? I mean, you have to dance when this music's playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
James does a good job of not.
I just can't dance. That's why.
Okay. I don't want to look. We've drank together. You can dance, my friend.
Yeah.
And what a good segue to talk about the upcoming HomebrewCon. No, I do. I guess you know what? I can start the show off with that because we do have exciting news. We have a booth number 719. It's an island, and it is like. I don't think Carrie specifically listens to this podcast. She's got young ones. She has a life. She has better things to do. But I know some of the people at the AHA listen, and I want to thank all of them. They gave us, it might have been pure coincidence, but thank God for coincidences. It was booth 719. I don't know if I showed you guys.
Yeah.
It is a great location.
It is.
So you don't think it was our good looks and charm that got us the booth?
R is too inclusive of a word. Your Todd, your charm, your Tom. Yeah, when we're at HomebrewCon and everyone knows who you are, and again here I go Debbie Downer, but they don't ever remember me. I have to introduce myself. We know you're actually talking about your charm, Todd. It's not my charm.
Everybody knows you now. I think that's an old stick. I mean, they know you now. They see you. They love you.
I will bet you $100 Annie Johnson will introduce herself to me again at HomebrewCon. I'll go to the Pico Brew booth with you. I'll have a crisp $100 bill in my back pocket ready to give you if she remembers my name.
All right. I can't wait.
And that kind of threw her under the bus, but whatever. She was a great interview. We should actually, we get a lot of listeners that are like, hey, you should follow up with, lately it was Jim Miller, the UFC fighter. He just fought. Congratulations, Jim. He just won his last fight in the UFC. He has the record for the most amount of fights in UFC history in the organization. And he's ranked, he's in the top 5 for finishes in I think the UFC overall, maybe just his division. He's in there for wins, and he has a lot going for him. Future Hall of Famer for sure. I'd love to get him back on. But Annie,
that would be fun. We got to do it without the clicker this time.
The clicker.
The clicker.
Yeah, he had a bottle that he was clicking on for 15 minutes. I'll never forget. It reminds me of that old World War II movie where they like a bridge too far or something where they used a little clicker to find each other.
In the hedgerow.
Yeah. That I never saw that, but I guess that was just historically accurate because I think in Band of Brothers, like the little dog trainer clicker, right? Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, he did. He did have a bottle. I'll tell him. You know what? When you're like Jim is, I fanboyed out a little when I was interviewing him because I was like, I've been following him since before. His brother fought in the IFL and choked out a guy that is local to the Austin area. And that was my first experience with the Miller brothers. And so who was I to tell Jim Miller, hey man, stop doing what you're doing because it might be annoying to Todd Burns when he's listening to this episode. So, you could fight him and change what he's doing, Todd, if you want. No, next time beforehand, I'll just tell him like, hey, let's maybe not click on the bottle. But anyway,
I'm gonna get a bottle now to click on just to annoy you.
Oh, stop! You would, but the good thing is I can mute you. It'll just sound awkward whenever it sounds like I'm talking to myself because I've muted you the rest of the show. But yeah, but where I was going with that is that it would be great to have Annie back on the show. Maybe when we do the interviews we typically do around HomebrewCon, maybe we could get Annie back on and talk about what Pico Brew's been up to. I'd love to have John Blickman back on. He's always one of my favorite people to hang out with during HomebrewCon.
Yeah, he's great.
Steve from the AHA, or any of the AHA people, but Steve was particularly nice to us when he had us over at headquarters a few years ago. He'd be a fun guy to have back on. If Carrie would do it, I'm pretty sure she's off maternity leave, right, Todd? She'll be there at HomebrewCon.
Yes, she'll be there, I believe. Yes.
That would be a great interview.
She's
so much fun, too.
Yeah, ton of fun, and I'm desperate for her to like me, so maybe we'll get her instead of Steve.
You know what else I was thinking would be really cool is, we have some really diehard listeners. We could have a listener roundtable discussion and do a podcast that way.
I love it.
Ooh, that would be fun.
Yeah, because they're going to be at HomebrewCon.
Oh, yeah, we have a Mateshift meetup starting to build right now as people Instagram message me through the podcast page talking about, hey, I'm going to go to HomebrewCon. What's your booth number? Let's hang out. I know some spots. They had me at I know some spots, so we're gonna be
we'll put them to work.
That's right. Beer. We're gonna be chauffeured around, and this is actually here's a good part for me to inject this. I had put out a social blast. So Saturday coming up, this is May the 4th. Is Big Brew, and it's in celebration for next Tuesday's National Homebrew Day. So the American Homebrewers Association, every Saturday before National Homebrew Day, always does what they call the Big Brew. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what style they're doing at their headquarters, but I don't believe it's, I think the point is just to promote home brewing, right? I'm not brewing this Saturday. It's my kiddos. We're celebrating their birthday, my youngest kid and my middle kid collectively. So I'll have homebrew there. We'll have that IPA. But what I posted about was like, hey, we want to hear from you. What do you love about homebrewing? Call in at 325-305-6107. Leave a voicemail, and we will, if we play it on the air, I'll give you a Kegconnection gift card, just like if you submitted a question, how we do. And last night, so today's Thursday, last night, Wednesday night, I had a dozen, give or take, people like, hey man, I'm trying to get my question in, and it says that your line is full, or your inbox is full. I fixed that. So if y'all want to leave a voicemail now so that we can play them
Welcome to my world, people.
That's not nice, but it's true. It's true, and I can't dispute that. But it's fixed. So if you want to get yourself a Kegconnection gift card, but more importantly, we want you to be part of next week's episode. Tell us what you love about homebrewing, like if it's changed your life. If you do it with your family, like I do with my pop, that's my favorite part, and we'll talk about all that next week for National Homebrew Day. But I wanted to tell all of you who have tried, it is working now. So 325-305-6107. Leave a message or text that number, what you love about homebrewing. If we read it or play it on next week's episode, I'll get you a gift card. But yeah, getting that out of the way. Are you guys going to be brewing tomorrow, which is Friday, or Saturday by chance?
Well, I cannot brew Saturday. It's one of the biggest family events we have of the year. So on Sunday, I'm going to have all my family over. But I think to make up for that, James, we should probably brew tomorrow, right?
Yeah, we could do that.
We don't have any conical space, though, do we?
We don't. We're just going to have to put it in carboys.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible, but between my house and the shop, we have 45 gallons of beer in conicals right now. Wow. Yeah. What a problem to have. Completely out of fermenting space.
You said that?
No, actually, you know what? We've got more than that. There's 15 gallons in that Keyser outside in the warehouse.
Yeah, there's
the lemon drop pills.
Oh, that's right. And then there's several more beers that other people are doing in 5-gallon batch. I mean, the reason for that is that we're getting ready for HomebrewCon. We got lots of beers we're going to take with us. And we're trying to get ready for the show, and we still have to keep up with our own personal consumption during all this. So
sure.
it requires a lot of brewing, which is fun. That's what we enjoy brewing. So
we do enjoy brewing, but I want to address something. You said conicals and we might have to use conicals and buckets. You said that with such disgust. Hey man.
Well, we might have to use bucket. We have the conical fermenters, and we might have to actually, get away from our temperature controlled glycol.
Oh, pardon me. I meant carboys. You said carboys and buckets with such disgust.
Yeah.
The common.
Well, it's hard to go to that when you have a conical / bright tank that's temperature controlled.
I can only imagine. Only imagine. That is my next upgrade I want to do. I'm trying to convince my pop. He has an unoperating or a non-operational bathroom in that game room. Y'all have been in his extended game room house thing.
Oh, it's nice.
It's super nice. And that little, it's just a storage closet now, because the guy who had originally built that building was a dummy, and he put the drainage pipes or the plumbing going up a grade to the septic. I don't know if people understand how gravity works in physics, but poop doesn't go uphill. It takes a lot of pressure, and I've tried. I've had a lot of Mexican food in my life, but it does not go uphill very easily. So it's a storage closet. The toilet doesn't work, and I've told him, dude, let's rip all that out. You're not going to use it anyway for that, and let's make it a walk-in, so that way we can use that for temperature control for fermentation. We can store ingredients in there. It could be a win-win, and I'm like, I'm this close to getting him, real close, because I told him I'll buy, with the CoolBot, it becomes extremely affordable to accomplish that. Even after we have to do all the installation and all that, for a DIY project, it is a lot more reasonable than buying a walk-in. Like, Todd, you've bought walk-ins. They are not cheap.
No, I've never bought a walk-in, interestingly enough. The one we use upstairs, my uncle had in storage for 10 years, and he had never used it. And he gave it. I offered to buy it from him, and he gave it to me. Now, the flip side of that is I think we spent $3,000 getting it operational with the HVAC people, but at least we didn't have to pay for the whole walk-in. So
yeah,
like I said, even $3,000 would be over budget for what I'm anticipating we'd have to spend using a CoolBot. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. And plus, maybe you can get your dad to pay for it. He's retiring and needs something to do, right?
It's true. That is true.
He should brew beer for you nonstop.
See, we're on the same page, my friend. But yeah, so anyway, Big Brew this Saturday. If you call in and leave us a message, again, we'll get you a gift card. And that looks like that's all I've got for the small talk. I have a couple questions if you guys are ready kick off today's show. The first question comes from Jorge or George, but I think it's Jorge because it's with a J. He used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Jorge wrote, have you fellas ever experimented with your mash times and mashing temps? I've only brewed recipes from Homebrew Supply, and I've always made sure to hit the written temperatures exactly every time. What could I expect from my beer if I went low on my temps? What about if I went high on my temps? Same question, but about how long I mash or sparge for. Any insight you have would really help me understand why the recipe is the way that it is. Cheers, Jorge. Now, Todd and I already agreed that we're handing this off to James and just tuning out. I think Todd and I have some meetings to go to.
Well, I have experimented with it a lot, just not on purpose.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I do. I want to kick it off to James only because I think I've called James with similar questions before on Brew Day. Again, not on purpose, but I don't know if you've ever done it on purpose, James, but let's talk about maybe the functions that Jorge is writing about. Why are recipes the way they are?
Well, it all has to do with the body of the beer, the sweetness of the beer. It's if you're talking about the fermentable range, you're going to be in the 140 degree range for the beta, and then you're going to be in the mid to high 155 to 158. Some people would argue all the way down to 152 is where the alpha, which is the long. If you can imagine sugars or fermentable sugars, the way that they're extracted, they create two different styles, or we call them chains. So the alpha is a real long chain like this. A beta is little bitty pieces. So Of course, the yeast like to eat the beta better than the alpha because they're easier to consume. It's completely fermentable. So, if you're listening, you're going to think, well, what is he talking about? Well, it's all about what's left over after the yeast do their job. So if you want a fuller bodied beer, the yeast aren't going to be able to completely consume the alpha amylase. So there's going to be some of that left over. So you're going to give more body, and it'll give it a chewier, some people say chewier taste, but it also leaves some residual sweetness. You see that a lot in like stouts, where they're trying to counteract the bitterness of the hops and maybe the malt with a sweetness to kind of balance everything out. Now, if you get like a Pilsner, or a good example would be a very light beer, a light lager, they're going to be fermenting more on the beta side. So they want it a lighter body. They don't want any chewiness in the beer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I always wonder too, because when I'm brewing a recipe, which is again all my pop and I've ever done, I always wonder because we hit, like, now that we're doing all grain, I think temperature, there's more instances for us to screw things up, and also though we worry, like we just did the Kolsch, and fortunately it's very straightforward, kind of difficult to mess up. But one of the things we noticed when we were about to pitch the yeast during the boil, like during the cool down, right before we pitched the yeast, we noticed it looked like it's something coagulating at the top, right? Mm-hmm. And when you taste it, it's super sweet, like sugars. And I wondered, was that because we may have went too hot on our sparge or during our mash? Or, I mean, what are symptoms of you being outside of the temperature range? Or I don't know if acceptable temperature range is the right.
The problem, the symptoms is actually how it ends up gravity wise. So what you're seeing there was it right before it started boiling?
It was after. After, right.
Okay. Well, there's a hot break at the first. It hits about 190 degrees, and I always scoop that off because it can cause cloudiness after the beer's finished. Now that at the end is another type of, like, it's a cold break. It's proteins coagulated at the bottom. As that wort cools down, they want to clump together along with the hop residue at the bottom. So if you're all grain brewing, if you can create a whirlpool, you can keep all that in the center and just pick up the liquid and none of that.
Right, which was what we'll do in the future. We did scoop it because I did like we do the hot break and scoop off those digestive proteins, right? That are at the top. You've always embedded that in us and on the videos. My dad, our Cooler Brew video is his reference point. So
that's awesome.
You are the face of homebrewing to my family. My aunt and uncle brew too. You're the face. So
cool.
Hey, you know what? While you're talking about this, I think it'd be a good time because you called me about the mash out when you were brewing last time.
I did. Yep.
Why don't we have James, because it that's kind of right after this temperature ranges that you're talking about. Can you explain the mash out to people so in a way that maybe they could understand it better?
And and James, real quick, let me put it in context. I called Todd. Well, I tried to call James, and it went straight.
Whoa! You tried to call James first? That's hurtful.
Okay, if you want me to really go down my line, I called James. It went straight to voicemail. I called Joe. It went to voicemail. I Googled for 35 minutes. I then used Bing.com, and then Ask Jeeves apparently is a thing again.
Is it really?
Wow. That's hurtful. That is hurtful. And I gave you a good answer too, didn't I?
And then I called Todd. No, I'm kidding. You were my second choice, but I did call James first. But I called him because there was instructions that during the all grain. This is the first time we've done an all grain kit of from Kegconnection.com. The first all grain recipe was one Joe made using Brewer's Friend, and I still called James a million times because we didn't have the hand holding instructions that I'm used to James having written out. But he didn't do that recipe, so he didn't write them out. He just had to explain to me over the phone because I'm a child. But on this one though, there was an optional part about mashing out where once you get the mash in for an hour. The last 10 minutes, you add 170-degree water to the mash. And you don't add it, pardon me, you get the water that's in the mash up to 170. And I was like, Todd, what do I do? Do I heat up more water and add it on top and then go right into the sparge? And he goes, no, that's actually an optional process for when you're if you're using, if I had a grain father and we could just get the water back up. So yeah, if you could explain what mash out is and what it accomplishes, that would be.
Well, basically what it does, if you've got a recipe that you've nailed, and this is the best way for me to explain it. There's a lot of aspects to that we could go down that rabbit hole. But basically what it does is if like on my Kolsch recipe, I have a certain mashing schedule on that. And once I hit that, I immediately want to go to the mash out because that stops everything that you've created. So if you don't want to create any odd body or if you want to keep your mashing profile with what you've created in that batch, you do a mash out, and what it does, it stops all starch conversion. So it halts everything that you've created. So a lot of times, if you want to replicate a recipe, I'll do a mash out because I know that when I get the wort at 100 or the mash bed, the grain bed at 168 degrees, it's not going to do any more starch conversion. It's not going to create any more extra body. It's not going to create any more sugars, and it'll keep the body the way I want it. A lot of times you can just skip it. If you're doing a batch sparge, we flash sparge on the spike system. So we do the mash out, and then we also do the sparge. Keep the sparge nice and slow, 45 minutes, and you're good to go. But I do that to keep that profile, to try to replicate that beer the same every single time.
And even with a flash sparge or something, you could still just use hotter water at the very end, right?
Sure. Yeah. And also it can also help. It could help make the mash run better. You're getting all those sugars out of the grain bed. So once you stop creating sugars and you do that mash out for 15, 20 minutes, when you do your sparge, it seems to tend to make it run a little freer, if that makes sense.
On an all grain system using coolers like what we're doing, that cooler brew system, there is no way to accomplish a mash out like that, correct?
You could, if you wanted to, but that would be considered like a batch sparge because it's all in one unit.
I guess you could. The quicker you bring it to a boil, the quicker it's going to do the same thing, right?
And you could use a water calculator with what you have, but you just don't want to. Yeah. You could. I guess you could do a decoction with that if you wanted to get it up to temp. You could pull some of the grain out, boil it. You'd need a calculator on that, and you could get it up to temp.
Last time I Googled that word, my wife had to ask me what I was looking at, so I'm not gonna.
Yeah, you have to be careful on Google when you Google that word. So yeah. We have a really bad storm coming through, and I think it's a lot louder in this office than that one. So if y'all hear weird things, that's what it is.
Is it storming right now?
It's hard over in this office. I bet you can't even hear it over there.
I don't hear a thing.
No, and people who are listening, the reason I didn't bring it up is because the vast majority, thousands and thousands of people only do the audio. They don't do the video. But if you could see Todd during this episode went from a fully lit room to now he looks like he's in an episode of old Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark? Like, what the? You look so goofy. What? I thought you lost power, but then I was like, no, he's still on the internet. So.
No, we have. It's really raining and hailing and stuff. Well, not hailing, but raining really hard.
Yeah. Cool story, bro. But anyway, so
there you go.
Oh, that helped. That didn't help at all. So I guess to wrap up, like Jorge's, because like James said, maybe we'll have a future episode where I don't give you these questions the day of, and we can go down. Like people.
Yeah, we can go deeper in because that could be a full episode. But what I would tell Jorge, what I did when I first started playing around with mashing temps, is do as much research as possible. There's a lot of resources. BYO.com is an amazing resource. They've got really good articles, and Homebrew Talk has really good articles. They've got good forums, a lot of knowledgeable people. And I started playing around with that range, and you'd be amazed at what you can do with a batch of beer. You can take the same recipe and try mashing it on more on the beta side. So mash between 100 and start out at like 145 degrees and slowly ramp up to 150, or just do 148 or just do 158 and do smaller batches. And you'd be amazed at how your mind will wrap around the process of forming out and creating a not only taste but texture of a beer. And that's one wonderful thing about all grain brewing.
Yeah, and you'll be brewing a lot more when you do that. So you'll have a lot more beer on. But I agree. If Jorge, find a style that is your favorite that you want to perfect. That's a great start. And like I would say the Cole should be a great one to do that on.
Absolutely, yeah. Something simple to make, and then just play around with. You could even do step mashing. Just play around it, and I think you'd be pleasantly surprised in the results. That's what I did.
I agree. And also too, the people who write the recipes, James, Joe, Lorena from Brewer's Friend, or any recipe that you buy from any supplier, it's always a safe bet to go with the temperatures that they put in there. If you want to get the result that the creator of the recipe is wanting you to experience.
Exactly. And just keep in mind, this is what my opinions are, what I've come across in brewing over the years. That's a long subject like yeast. And I mean, there's chemistry involved in that I don't even understand.
Yeah. Magnets, man. How do they work? Jorge,
they just do.
Jorge, thank you so much for submitting your question. We got one more for today's show. It came from Steven, who also used the submit a question form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Steven wrote in, "Hey there, Joshua and crew. I love the podcast, and it's provided a lot of good information for me as well as entertainment. My question, is there a basic rule of thumb to help me pick hops when I'm creating a recipe? What resources do you use when building from scratch? I'm still new and a little overwhelmed by the thought of making my own recipes, but I daydream about it and know that I want to do it someday. I think I have an understanding on how malt works, but I'm still pretty clueless when it comes to choosing hops. Could you talk about popular hops used in a recipe like you're always talked about alt beer and why it's used in that recipe? You guys are great. Keep up the good work. Steve." Again, I'm going to throw it to you, James, but real quick before I do, we were talking about who we should have on the show. At HomebrewCon, we got to follow up with the Muntins guys, and maybe we could do a whole episode on malt, because we didn't. If I send, especially Jason, he wants to come on the show as a home brewer, not just he has been like, we could talk about Muntins, but that's like I don't even care if we talk about this company I work for at all. I just want to talk about brewing. But
no, that's absolutely cool.
I think it would be great to have them both back on, or even Jason, to specifically maybe do a whole episode just on malt, because that would be good. But anyways, with hops, this is a question I've had too, and I've been so spoiled by you guys being in my life, where I haven't had to find the answer to it. But James, when you're creating a recipe, what goes into your thought process for what hops you want to use besides maybe tradition?
Well, I was going to pull this out. This is what I use, and I got this years ago at a trade show, and it's from Hop Union, but all the major hop manufacturers make something like this.
The Hop Variety Handbook.
Yeah, and what it does is it gives you all the information on the hops and what the characteristics of it, whether it's aroma or whether it's bittering, and I love it. I would suggest anybody that's starting to dabble in their own recipes, get one of these books and go by, because these are the guys that are growing and producing these hops, and you're not going to get any better information than something like this.
I was originally going to throw the question to Todd, but I knew his answer was going to be the same as mine. Like, Todd, how do you choose the hops? And he'd say, well, I talked to James, and
I'll read the recipe.
Yeah, I'll read the recipe or get something online. But also, I have this big poster by our system that has all the hops there too, and it gives the bittering units, the characteristics, what they taste like, whether aroma. Same thing as this, but all on one wall. And this changes because they've got new strains coming out every year. And I love it. Now, I will say, going back to the alt beer recipe, the alt beer uses a specific hop. And there's only 2 or 3 that they use in Dusseldorf for making alt beer, and those are called noble hops. So I know that Schlussel uses German tradition, is what he calls it. So we use Saaz, and I should know the other one, but it's not coming to mind. But they're both noble hops. So if you go to any, and all these manufacturers have this data online, so you can go online and Google it too. That's what I do. And I know when I first started doing recipes, I used Cascade for everything. I mean, that was all. I bought it by the pound because I didn't know any better. And when I started experimenting with different hops, you can layer hops also. You don't have to use the same style. There's a whole different world out there. Just because I don't like IPAs, there was a point in time where I did, but that doesn't mean that you can't use hops to create a special type of beer. You can have the same, just going back to earlier, like the Kolsch recipe. It's a real simple recipe, and you can change the hops. You can dry hop it. You can do whatever you want to with it, and you can really see what that will do to change. You completely change the way a beer tastes with just hops.
And I'm glad you showed that book, because something, I specifically like to joke about how inept I am. But really, guys, I'm a child of modern technology and convenience. And I think we got to stop shaming. Like, I think there are people who, like James, I'm glad you brought that up, because you are not one of these people. You are very open about, I will have to Google it sometimes, or I'll literally email the brewer, or I
have done that before. Yeah, and believe it or not, they'll give you more than you think they will.
Exactly, but there are people out there who I think are maybe they're just pretentious. They put themselves off as if like knowledge is just inherent to them, and it's like, oh, what do you mean? I don't understand. How do you not know what hops to use? Well, it's because I've never brewed in my life, man. It's just like
me and Todd can attest to this. I learned way better making mistakes than I ever did reading. So you're gonna make mistakes. Don't worry about that. I'm just a normal homebrewer, just like you are, and just like Todd is. And that's why I think that's why a lot of people like to listen to the show is I don't want to try to talk over anybody's head.
Right. Well, you're very transparent though. And that's why I love having you around the office and on the show as a mainstay, because like I said, I think home brewing is not as difficult or mysterious as a lot of us make it out to be. It's
Correct.
It's a lot of just figuring out the science and finding harmony between the stages of brewing. If you're doing all grain, the harmony of from the mash to the sparge to the boil, and it's just finding your flow. And some people will tell you batch sparging or fly sparging, and some people will tell you to dry hop. But like you said, it's really once you can find a sweet ebb and flow that you like.
Yep. Everybody brews different, but they all brew good beer. So
exactly,
it doesn't matter how you brew it. It's the end result.
And
I was going to mention one other thing. Have you ever used hopslist.com?
I have not. I've never heard of it.
That's a really good resource, and it's not like put out by one hop company, so it's kind of interesting because it goes into a lot of detail on different hops. It's a pretty good resource. Yeah,
that's great. I'm gonna have to write that down.
We live in I've said it a million times. Sorry, we live in the greatest time ever to be a human, much less to be a home brewer, because of all the information at our fingertips. They don't have it on Android. Thanks a lot, guys. But if you go to Brewer's Friend, talking about resources, Todd. Brewer's Friend is a fantastic resource to recipe building, and it has all the calculators that can walk you through. I've never brewed a recipe I have fake made, but it's super easy to make them. The reason I haven't is because we've talked about this before. I'm a one-trick pony. The Kolsch that James has given, or the recipe he's given me, is solid every time. Okay, I'll do that. I know how it's going to end up. The ESB, same. The alt I want to get to, so on and so forth. But Brewer's Friend, Steven was talking about what resources you use. Brewer's Friend, Beersmith, Homebrew Talk, Reddit. You've got a lot of stuff at your fingertips, man. Even to go on YouTube, and I bet you if you typed in what hops should I use for my pale ale, you'll probably find someone who made a video on, hey, here's how I made
We've used Brewer's Friend to develop a lot of the recipes on Kegconnection.com. I mean,
it's great.
We may come up with the idea, but when you really want to go in and make sure you're staying in style and doing all those things right, we use Brewer's Friend as well. it's not a secret. I mean, I think a lot of people use that program for it. So
yeah, and I went from another program I'd used for years to Brewer's Friend, and I was amazed at how easy it is to create recipes, and the style guide's real interactive too. If you're looking for a brewing software that is probably, I've used a lot of them, I think this is probably the easiest one to use. It's got a really good water profile calculator on there as well.
And this is when I reach out to Lorena and say, what do I got to do to get some commission, man? We just did an infomercial for you just right now at the end of our episode.
Well, she has to do another podcast with us because that was a lot of fun.
There you go. Oh, yeah. And I'll wrap up the show by, again, inviting everyone to come see us at booth 719 from June 27th through the 29th in Providence, Rhode Island for the 2019 National Homebrewers Convention, #HomebrewCon. Lorena's going to be running the the Brewer's Friend booth, but when she is gone doing her talk and all that, I think I'm running it. So maybe I can just hand out licenses. I don't know. I'm gonna figure some way out to get her in trouble. But I'm really looking forward to that, and I think we absolutely are going to be doing an episode with her in person while we're there in Rhode Island because she's going to be 4 feet from us. So there's no reason we wouldn't.
She's trapped.
Yeah.
She's not going anywhere.
And this is the soundbite I'm going to use for our Instagram post. So just calling her out, letting you know, Lorena, you're stuck with us for 3 or 4 days. But Todd's phone is rudely ringing.
That was not my phone. I don't know whose phone that was.
Yeah, you used the default AT&T. I think
you don't mind if I get that, do you?
No, your phone and people who use the jitterbug old people's phone is the exact same ringtone.
It's the flip phone ringtone.
Yeah, it's the flip phone ringtone. And yeah, I think they even gave Todd a version of the iPhone that has big buttons on it. His AARP card came in and he got a bigger phone. But anyway.
Yeah, I do kind of like the old kind of stuff.
I know you do. Guys, that does it for this week's show. I appreciate y'all taking the time to hang out with me again, as always. And next week, we're going to talk all about what we love about homebrewing in celebration of Tuesday's National Homebrew Day. So I'm looking forward to talking to y'all soon.
See you next Tuesday.
Absolutely. And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com, click on the submit a question link at the top of the page, and oh man, I'm blanking. Oh, and submit your question. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, Kegconnection.com, for supporting our podcast and the home brewing community. Go to Kegconnection.com right now, use the promo code HHH, and you'll get 5% off your order. On behalf of Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.